before we come to digital transformation, we see that from our CXO study, where we've surveyed 3,000 CXOs, 98 or 89% of them said that their biggest business challenge is the cost pressure. So that's certainly something that is not new, and 84% said that the biggest challenge is growth, not news at all. And 83% said that it is competition. So the biggest business challenges that companies are faced with all over the world are cost pressure, growth, and competition, all over 80% here. And these are challenges that we see in companies since economics was invented a couple hundred of years ago. So that is definitely something that is not new from this perspective. But when we go into more detail, and what we found here is that when we take the business challenges, cost pressure, growth, and competition, that the companies find one answer to this because this is digital transformation. So the answer to cost pressure, growth, and competition is always also a digital answer to these challenges. Because of 91% of the CXOs said that digital transformation is the answer to this. Definitely, it's not that everyone is a leader in digital transformation. Some have just started the journey to digital transformation, and some are laggards, and some are very far ahead of the digital transformation journey. So companies like Bosch that a year ago just announced that they will turn over from a manufacturing company or automotive supplier to a software and services company. So that fundamentally changes the business model of Bosch, and this is definitely a digital answer to the question how to challenge cost pressure, but moreover growth and competition. So I don't know if you know that, for instance, Bosch has more than 60,000 developers all over the world from their more than 200,000 employees, which is a vast amount of developers that they have, and even more than, for instance, companies like SAP or Salesforce.com or even Oracle have as employees. So they dramatically changed their business model and are in these terms far or more ahead of their competition than others. So they are a little bit more ahead of in the digital transformation journey. But we also observe a lot of companies that are in the digital transformation journey just started with the front office transformation. So everything that has to is related to omni-channel commerce or stuff like that. And some don't even have to start it, so 9% said that they don't have an answer to the digital transformation. But anyway, 91% is almost all companies have started to think somehow digital. What is related to that is that we see in EMEA a growth rate of apps-related IT services market in 2016 of 3.6%, which is staying a little bit flat over the years. So it is just on the second digit or the first digit. It's varying there, so it's not that big growth as one might expect if 91% of the companies say we are going to go on a digital transformation journey. But when we look into a little bit more detail, we see that there's definitely growth in digital-related IT services segments. So in terms of IoT or in terms of customer experience or interactive experience, we come to this in detail a little bit later, which is 12%. And in order to finance, if we see 3.6% growth in apps-related services, but only 3.6% growth in apps-related services, but 12% in digital related services, it is that somehow companies have to find the money to finance it, and it definitely we see that some areas of the apps-related market or the total IT services market has to somehow decrease the cost there in order to finance the new stuff that the companies want to implement when they go the digital way. So that's why we see that the offshore rate in EMEA is going to increase over the next years up to 23% in order to also to stay competitive in terms of IT cost and reduce the cost pressure that the companies are faced with. So when we go into a little bit more detail and we see or spread the market into IoT, which is Industry 4.0, smart X, like smart health, smart metering, and so on, or connected car, or interactive experience, like customer experience or employee experience, and the last one, the backend systems, like ERP, CRM, and so on. Then we see that in Western Europe, unfortunately, we do not have that for EMEA as a total yet. It's the numbers are in production here, but we can, if you have the CITSI subscription, you will find the numbers for whole EMEA in the next couple of months. So the IT services that we see here is for IoT spending is 29 billion euros that we see in Western Europe. So a big amount of money, and we see here 20% growth in this market. When it comes to interactive experience, so everything that has to do with customer experience and so on, we see in the market of 31 billion euros that is spent in EMEA by companies, with a solid growth rate of double-digit 11%. Not that much as in the IoT space, but 11% is more than what we see, for instance, in the backend stuff. So the total apps-related IT services sums up at 85 billion euros. So it's not that, or what we see is that some of the IoT stuff and some of the interactive experience projects fall also into this total apps-related IT services market, but it's only 3.7%. This is due to the fact that we have some really hot topics like the SAP HANA related CNSI services that we see in EMEA on a total basis of 1.3 billion euros. So there's not much in terms of application management and so on yet, but we also see there that customers are now asking about more or different operating models, so in terms of hosting, outsourcing, but also a lot of cloud questions around SAP HANA, for instance. There we see a market that is growing in the next years until 2019, around 70% or 72% as the cumulated average growth rates that we see here. So a very hot market here. And in order to achieve just 3.7%, the market must decrease in other areas. And we see that, for instance, in the non-SAP HANA related CNSI services, where the market is shrinking over the next years on average -4%. But it's compared to the 1.3 billion CNSI market in the SAP HANA related CNSI, you see that the consulting and system integration is, but it's a very huge market of 11.9 billion euros that we see here. But on average, it's decreasing. When we come to where the market dynamic comes from in terms of apps, it's also that we have some enabling technologies, and in order to that fit into the IoT and into the interactive experience. So all big providers like Oracle, SAP, and Salesforce, they all have heavily invested in new enabling technology like mobility analytics, big data. So that's where HANA is, for instance, or the Salesforce Wave, or also the Oracle Exalytics, and so on. That's what we see here, and then the cloud model and the security. Unfortunately, we do not have yet social numbers for the social market, but for the mobility market, we see a market of 4.9 billion euros that we see here, and a cumulated average growth rate of 32%. So everything that is linked to IoT, interactive, and even to backend scenarios will be somehow also be connected to mobility scenarios, or to mobilize these scenarios that we see in the market. Next point would be analytics and big data, where the market is even a little bit bigger, of 6.7 billion IT services revenue that we see, and it's growing fastly with 44% on average in the next years till 2019. And the cloud market, it's even bigger. It's now sums up to 23.4 billion euros, and on a very high growth rate of 36%. And the security part, everyone know in the company said that's one very big issue, but it's a little bit more smaller market. It's only 10.7 billion euros, and a very good or a good growth rate of 10% compared to the average of 3.6%. When it comes to the service value chain, we see that consulting sums up to 10.3 billion euros on a growth rate of 4.9%. So if it's consulting for topics like social mobility, analytics, cloud, and security, the growth rate is higher, as we just have seen. But related to backend scenarios, it's sometimes it's even decreasing, so that we only sum up at or come up to a 4.9% growth rate here. So projects that you find in the market should always have an enabling component in these projects in order to achieve higher growth rates here. Also, system integration, 49.5 billion euros that we see for 2016, and a growth rate of 4.1%, 15 to 19, that we see here. And application management is 20.9 billion euros for EMEA, and 2.3% that we see here. But yeah. So that's the apps-related marketing in EMEA in terms of consulting, system integration, and application management. So you have to carefully think about where to invest. And what's also new in this, if we come to application manage or apps-related services, is that we also see new competitions arising in this field here. So, for instance, the competition coming from industry companies, consultancies, agencies, and service providers. So, industry companies like Bosch and Siemens, they build up their own IoT clouds, for instance, and Bosch is also investing in CNSI, but also when they come to when they have their own cloud offering into application management. So they are investing also heavily into the service value chain in terms of consulting and system integration. And they have a good standing there for their topic like IoT, that is also related to back-end system integration within the manufacturing companies. So they have a good positioning here. When it comes to consultancies, we see companies like PwC, KPMG, or here, for instance, EY. EY is, for instance, the fastest growing SAP partner in the world. They started a couple of years ago, like I think 5 years ago, where they restarted their SAP business within a new within a new SAP practice, and grew up that practice of a business of over $1 billion that they make in revenue in 2015 and 2016. So fast-growing company or SAP practice, for instance, here, but also PwC, after selling the business, they now come up with a new practice and also are very successful because of their business relation that they have to the finance departments, for instance. But we see also a new competition coming up from WPP or Sapient Nitro that are, for instance, Sapient Nitro is a long-term SAP Hybris partner, and they have also invested in consulting and system integration capabilities. And then we have the traditional IT providers like Capgemini and Accenture, for instance. What we see here is, what we want to denote here is that the transformation that these companies have transformed also themselves, and the value add that they offer is the business and IT relationship that they bring into play here. The question now is, what are the traditional IT providers doing here in terms of transformation? What's the value add that they bring to the table? And therefore, we have just a small sidekick. Where can you differentiate in the market when it comes to transformation or digital transformation? We can observe or categorize the roughly three types of change, or like this model of 3 types of change that I want to talk about here. So first of all, it's a developmental change, where it's about optimizing existing systems, like when it comes to managed systems, or to body shopping, or some cloud-related CNSI, where only the technical parts are interesting. Then we have transitional change, which is bringing a system from A to B, like a greenfield, or not like a greenfield, but just a technical migration of, for instance, S4HANA, coming from SAP ERP 6.0 and bringing it to SAP S4HANA just in a technical way. And then we have transformational change, so bringing a system from A to an unknown B. So this would mean, for instance, that case that you might know, like Kesa, they are offering now to their customers air instead of compressors. That's one example that is here. So bringing a system from A to B means also transforming the system, that it is not related to a manufacturing company only, but also brings into play that the company can now offer their components or their machines that they are offering as a service. And therefore, you have to somehow transform the manufacturing company also into a service company. And that has to be reflected also into the back-end systems, but also into the front-end system. So there comes everything together, and it's fundamentally changing also the business model of this company. So when we see the type of change, we see that that developmental change is not changing the value creation process of the company. But when it comes to transformational change, it will change the type of value creation within these companies. Where's the room for differentiation now for service providers that we see in the market? So when it comes to developmental change and also for transitional change, so just technical migration from A to B, these are, in our opinion, most of that are commodity services, and you cannot differentiate yourself or as a service provider, when you differentiate, it's very much into the details. It's oftentimes a long-term relationship that you have, or sometimes you may have some superior IP or tools that you can offer, but it's very much into the details. It's not that you can, that's a very good differentiator in the market. Oftentimes, when it comes to managed services or body shopping, sometimes it's the quality of the skills of the people that you have, and there's always a shortage on the market to special skills, like, for instance, now HANA consultants, especially in the German market. But then it's if it's not, and if it's a managed service, then it's oftentimes only a price discussion that you have with your customers. So more differentiating are services all around transformational change. So how can you bring a company from an known system A to an unknown system B? Not only a system, but also a company from a business standpoint. There you can differentiate. So the whole transformation from I produce machines like Käse for compressors, and referring that to the old ERP backend system and so on, and digitizing that, to transforming the company, but also the IT infrastructure behind that is differentiating yourself. But differentiation is also, I talked a little bit about that, are solutions, but the more commodity it is, the harder it is for you to differentiate. And if it's a developmental change, so standardized processes and so on, it's very hard to differentiate yourself in terms of digital transformation. When we talk about digital transformation, we always relate that also, or not related, but digital transformation in our point of view is always like the Käse case, air instead of compressors, a business transformation. So therefore we put up a business transformation map where we have, first of all, the business opportunities and challenges. So why do we have to transform our business? And then we have the objectives, the what, business transformation objects. And if a complete company has to be changed or a business has to be changed, then we have to take a look at the processes, the technology, the people, and the organization. And then we have the how, which is the business transformation value chain. So coming from strategy to transformation roadmap, to transformation execution, to industrialized change, and then to measure change, which would be then the business transformation value chain. So it's slightly or very much similar to the service value chain that we have, and it can be transformed into that, and we want to use that in order to somehow put in some of the IT service providers here, how they position in the market, in the EMEA market. So for instance, now we take a look at Capgemini. They are, or Capgemini Technology, they are focusing on processes and technology. So they are traditional IT service provider on the EMEA market, and they do not go into detail in organizational problems and do not go into detail into people problems. So like change management or changing the work of the people, changing the organization of the people, changing the organization itself, what are the best legal entities, and so on. They are pretty much focused on processes and technology in our point of view. When we come to another company like Tata, reflecting pretty much the, or resembling pretty much the Indian players on the EMEA market, they are not that much into strategy. They entered the EMEA market from a price perspective, so from industrializing change, and now they are going up to transformation roadmaps and to strategy roadmaps. That's why they also bought companies within the European market to have a European footprint here, and also to offer consulting and strategy capabilities within these markets. So they will now evolve upwards in terms of transformation roadmap and strategy roadmap when it comes to processes and technology, in our point of view. And then we have companies like Accenture, the market leader in this, for instance, in the SAP technology market. But they have different growth platforms like Accenture Strategy, Accenture Consulting, Accenture Technology or Digital, Accenture Consulting, and Accenture Operations. And they are able to cover the whole business transformation value chain from processes and technologies, but are now also able or have invested into capabilities to have strategies around people and organization and have transformation roadmaps for them and also to enable them. But they are now, like you might know the claim that they have people first, so they are focusing on the people now and focusing more on the transformation execution, so the change management, more into the change management of the people and the affected workplace and so on. And then we have PwC, so they are standing for the consultancies here, and you see they are not into industrializing change, but they are in the strategy, transformation roadmap, and transformation execution. They have built up capabilities here around everything, also working together with their advisory organization that cover all aspects of the organizational change, but also on the people change. They are only have a gap here in terms of industrializing change of processes and technology. So this is in terms of, this would be also application management and outsourcing that they do not offer here. So different competitors or different IT service providers that we have seen here. When we summarize it, we see that the IT ecosystem is changing, and what we see here is a first model that we have built, where we see that if companies are technology oriented, so more to the CIO organization, like technology suppliers or infrastructure service suppliers, they will, in our opinion, lose market shares. So this is here, lose market shares. Companies like SaaS vendors, but also business consultants, business service suppliers, or business product suppliers, they will or they will increase their market shares because they are more business user oriented. But we also have like offshore suppliers and cloud services specialists, like new technology providers that we see that are more CIO related, but they can, like the offshore suppliers, offer a very competitive price here, which is in terms of cost pressure, a very good argument for the customers. Application software vendors we see in the middle, so like SAP and so on. If they do not transform into more a SaaS kind of model, we do not see that they will win against other competitors here, and that's what we also see when we compare Salesforce are quite good here compared to SAP in terms of winning market shares. Okay, So this is a model that we've seen, and we also have put in or evaluated the apps-related IT services market and the top 20 companies that we observe in the market, in the EMEA market. You see the bubble size, which is the revenue of the companies. These are the revenues of 2015. And here you see company growth minus market growth. So if the company growth is higher than the market growth, then we see that they are winning market shares. So, and we can divide these into 3 different groups. So more IT-related companies like Atos, HP Enterprise, CGI, T-Systems, Sopra Steria, IBM, SAP, they are losing market share. So this is SAP Consulting here, not SAP the product related revenue, just the services part of SAP. They are more traditional players because they are not so much related to the business users as, for instance, PwC, Deloitte, or KPMG that have a real good access to, for instance, or especially to the finance departments here, and but also to the CXO level in these companies. Companies like Capgemini, but also very much Accenture here, you see, they have evolved due to their growth platforms and changing their go-to-market away from CIO organization more to the C-suite. They have changed their go-to-market, and these pays out for Accenture, for instance, in winning market shares. But we also have winners on the left side here that are more CIO more related to CIO organizations, like Cognizant, Tech Mahindra, Infosys, HCL, TCS, or Wipro, which are Indian-based suppliers that can offer sometimes a superior price model. So they have built up good quality in terms of on-site capabilities, but also in terms of transformational capabilities. They are heavily investing, and they want to change their go-to-market there, and they invest in these capabilities. But they are more related in terms of visibility in EMEA, in the CIO organization, and also in their go-to-market. But they will or have started to change that. So there we see that they are also growing and are increasing their market shares compared to their traditional providers that we see here. So definitely this group here has to change their go-to-market and go more the business user way, and like also these companies that will do in order to come into this growth area that we see here. So it's very important when we come to some recommendations that we have here, that companies that are placed more on the left side, the CIO organization, have to close the gap between digital and business, so or between IT and business, and to become more business user oriented, because we can now see that these companies are winning market shares against the competition here. But they have to stay competitive in the commodity services market and differentiate in transformational services. But the transformational services, as we've said in the beginning, transformation and digital transformation is always a business transformation. So the differentiating services, they have to be more business outcome focused in order to differentiate. And business outcome focus is only a first step in terms of staying in time and budget, or achieve a time to value or an ROI due to a consulting and system integration project, but more into terms of we achieve for our customer a growth of XYZ% and so on. So the conversation has to be more business oriented in terms of the latter one. Okay, so we have now 37 minutes. Are there any questions till then?
One second.
I would open up it for Q&As.
We have a question here. This presentation is EMEA focused. Do you have similar analysis on North America market?
Yeah, we are working on that. So actually it wasn't ready yet, but we are doing, I'm working on it, and we will come up with the numbers and the same analysis for the North American market as well. But unfortunately, some numbers weren't ready, so we couldn't present it yet, but we will come out with that in short term.
Just a short reminder, everybody can use the chat function on the right hand of this presentation to ask questions right now. Anything else that is going to be asked afterwards will be answered via email. So you get the opportunity to ask questions now. I think everybody got all the information he or she needs right now. Yeah, thank you, Christian, for this interesting presentation. And yeah, as an attendee, you still have the opportunity to write an email to w.lurcher@pac-online.com, and we're going to send you slides and answer questions as needed. I wish you all a very nice evening and weekend. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.